Hello everyone, my name is Kaden King, and on this channel I tell interesting or scary Reddit stories that I have found online. This is a safe space to enjoy stories of the unknown. If you have any stories you'd like to share with me of your own, you can contact me on Instagram or even post on the channel's subreddit page, with the link down below in the description. But for now, enjoy the video. When I was 14, I decided to stay the night at my best friend's house. It was, you guessed it, Devil's Night, and the evening was almost over. Daylight hadn't struck yet, but it was time to get everybody up for school. My best friend and I hurried to wake all of her 9 or so siblings, and once everybody was ready, we huddled in the living room, lights off with the exception of the kitchen light spilling through the doorway. We'd scroll our phones while we were entertaining one of her siblings concerned about the zombie apocalypse, and each of us had fun telling our ideas of what we would do in a zombie-infested version of our time. This is fine for a while, but I got bored, and I had another idea. I was always a fan of scary stories, and I thought it'd be a funny joke to tell ghost stories to scare the kids, until the time came for us to go and wait by the bus stop, outside, in the dark. I was a mean kid, but I digress. I told a few stories, mostly made up, but when I was finished, a silence came over the room. That was when we heard it, the sound of footsteps above us. No child in the home could have possibly made their way into the roof area, nor would they have wanted to in the first place. And as far as anybody knew, all that was up there were tools left by the older brother, who had moved out and visited once in a while to make house repairs. He had strategically left his tools and a few boxes in the roof to keep the kids from messing with them, and he was also the only one who actually knew how to get up there. Yet we all heard footsteps as they danced above us in eerie silence. They were light and playful, but something felt oddly sinister about them, too creepy and calculated to be an animal, too human, yet not human simultaneously. Maybe it was the way they sped up, seemingly stepping into the shape of a circle, big emphasis on that. The way the steps sounded as they went on sounded so distinct, and they went around and around and around for almost a whole minute. All of us stayed quiet, processing the strange occurrence. Then we started to freak out, of course, with all siblings present, and no way for any stranger to get into the roof without instructions as per the absent brother. We are still left to this day with no explanation of what it could have been. When my mother was a little girl, she spent her early years in a remote area of Mexico. No electricity, no running water, and definitely no air conditioning. Due to so many people all living in one small house, it was uncommon for her and a few other of her siblings to sleep on the porch. Yes, you heard that right. They slept on pallets outside. She recalls it actually much cooler some nights on the porch than it was in the house. The porch had a screen that my grandfather installed, and he also built their house by his own hand. The closest neighbor was miles away, so from my understanding the house is pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Now this is where the ghost story begins. My mom and 3 of her siblings were the lucky ones who got to sleep outside every night. They never had any problems or fears until the night the baker boy began to come around. A small child with golden curls, dressed in white bacon attire, wearing a mask that was a real skinned pig. He would walk in circles around the house reciting a certain phrase that my mom never really understood, because it wasn't in Spanish or English. At first they were scared, but over time they grew to appreciate his presence. It was almost as if he were walking around the house to protect them from whatever fate had maybe happened to him. They never knew who he was, or if he was even real, just that they would all see him. My grandpa never believed them and assumed they were making it all up to come inside the house, but they swore they weren't. It wasn't until over time an outline of his path began to show up around the house. Needless to say, they didn't stay in that house much longer, and moved before they eventually made it into the States. The strangest part is that before my grandpa died, he told my mom he had finally seen him, the blonde boy with the pig mask. Someone asked me to tell the story from my other post about my house's corner peeping ghost. I suffer from occasional sleep paralysis. When this happens, I wake up from what is usually a nightmare. Sometimes there is no nightmare, but can't open my eyes or move except to scream in a muffled groan. I also feel an immense weight or pressure on my chest, like some people describe as something holding them down. This goes on for a few minutes until I can either snap out of it, or my girlfriend rushes over to me to soothe and gently wake me up. This has happened a number of times over the years, but a couple instances in particular stand out. So I was having an episode of sleep paralysis, but this night it happened twice, back to back. So I had just fallen asleep, not 30 minutes, when suddenly my head started to buzz and vibrate. It also got very cold in this instance. Like other episodes, I couldn't move, but this time I could open my eyes. However, I couldn't see. It was like what some visually impaired people describe as only being able to see out of their peripheral vision. It was just a blackness in the main view of my vision paired with this headache-inducing vibration in my skull with the sound of a booming, low-frequency humming. Not a whole unlike when you hear the deep bass hits in the music of the movie Inception, but just one note, very low and loud note. It was terrifying because it's never happened like this before. Finally, I managed to wake up, get some water, tell my girlfriend about it, and attempt to sleep again. But it happened again. Same blindness, same humming, same symptoms. My girlfriend then had to shake me out of it this time. Needless to say, I wasn't able to go back to sleep until the following night of exhaustion. The other incident was a night terror where I was hunted by a demon or witch. I felt sharp, long nails piercing into my chest, but I couldn't wake up out of it and felt the pain of being impaled. But that's a story for another time. For some context, my family moved to the Isle of Wight a few years before I was born. The house I bought is still the home to this day. I'm now 19 and have moved away. But this house is 6 bedrooms and built in the early 1800s, made for rich Victorians to use as a holiday home. The island itself has a lot of history, and I'd say most people I know have at least one story of a weird paranormal encounter. When we moved in, there was nothing unusual apart from the Nazi carvings in the wall under the stairs, which was weirdly shrugged off and covered up considering my family is Jewish. Anyway, growing up in the house, the main story I heard was one time my granddad had bought a new video camera and was getting a friend to help him set it up. They filmed out of the kitchen window, talking and nothing seemed off until they finished up and played the tape back. They saw a man staring back at them. It wasn't smudged or hard to see, it was clear as day. A middle-aged man in a Victorian sailor uniform. It was no one any one of us had seen before, and they both swear no one else was with them and they saw no one else. The man just looked into the camera, not moving a muscle, just stared until the video ended. Other things like footsteps, things moving, locked cabinets opening on their own, and just a feeling you get sometimes in particular rooms happened that I can remember, or have been told. But I still want to go to that part of the house, because I don't think I'll sleep again. I honestly thought it was a joke until seeing it for myself. No one believes me when I tell them, and the video is long lost. But I swear on my life that man, whoever it was, didn't look like he wanted us to be there. I got home a couple of minutes ago, and as I was pulling into the driveway, I saw a dog running on the street with a leash on that looked exactly like my German Shepherd. We've had my dog run out of the house a couple of times before, when guests came over and didn't close the front door fast enough. I usually drive up next to her, open my passenger door, and she comes into the car. So I stopped and did the same thing. She started approaching my car, and once I opened my passenger door and waited for her to come in, she disappeared. I got out of the car and started looking everywhere, but couldn't see my dog in sight. I checked the backyard doors, and both of them were still closed. I called my family after, and they told me that our dog is sitting right next to them. Did I just see a ghost dog? This happened when I was about 10 years old, living with my grandparents in their house with my mother and little sister as a result of a messy divorce. Almost everybody who's been in and out of that house before has some sort of paranormal experience to share, and I have a dozen of my own. But this was my most direct and obvious, and the one that stuck with me the most. We had our beds and all of our stuff in the back room, which had a door leading into a small hallway that had a sink with a large mirror, a bathroom, and a wooden, dusty old sauna and bathtub at the very end that were both now used for keeping junk. I could never sleep with that door open, without getting nightmares and feeling this horrible oppressive presence. I know something lives back there, but I don't think I'll ever get the chance to figure out what. I think the fact that we were so close to this hallway had something to do with what I'm about to describe. So me and my sister had a large mutt of a dog called Penny, who was an absolute sweetheart. My grandpa didn't like her at all though, and insisted upon making her an outside dog. He would literally throw her outside whenever she tries to stick her nose in through the backyard door. Living in Nevada, during the peak of summer, one day we found her lying on the concrete near her kennel, dead, for God knows how long, from heat stroke. It was a horrible day. My grandpa and my mom wrapped her up in a towel, stuck her in the back of the van, and took her wherever you take dead dogs. The memories are blurry, but they would both insist that me and my sister stay back with my grandma. That night, I went to sleep in my mom's bed. After a while, as I was a kicker, she kicked me out and tucked me into my own bed. I don't remember falling asleep. The very next thing I remember is lying on my bed, staring at the roof with this overwhelming feeling of despair sitting on my chest. It was almost hard to breathe with how horrible I felt. Then, I hear Penny walking on the carpeted floor, her breathing, the sound of her paws. Everything is her. My hand is hanging off the bed, and she puts her nose into it, almost nuzzling it, and whines. The weight comes off my chest, and I remember smiling a little and calling her a good girl. Then she was gone. I woke up crying, so hard I almost couldn't breathe again. There's my memory. I don't think it was really a dream. And my grandma says to this day she wanted to say goodbye to me. I knew Penny was hurting before she died, and I'd like to think that this was her telling me that she's okay, she loves me, and she's leaving now. I wish I had more time with her. We had Penny for less than 2 years, but I'll never forget my girl. I find it rather unfortunate that many people on this page tend to disregard or dismiss experiences that occur at night as mere sleep paralysis or hallucinations. But I do enjoy having to write about these experiences. But here I go, nonetheless. Last night was a night of turmoil for me. I had a toothache and was up and down all night. I had seen a figure of a young girl around 10 to 12 years old, wearing a white dress and long black hair with bangs. But her face was indiscernible as a flash on the side of my eye. I shrugged it off and tried to get some sleep, but I was woken up by the same spirit standing at the side of my bed, but on top of it. She looked frustrated, with her fists on her sides and stomping her feet like a child throwing a tantrum. I was petrified, but I just stared at her, wondering why she was doing this. Then, as she turned to walk off, she disappeared, leaving a shadow on the headboard. I thought to myself, well, she's gone now. But I was still filled with dread. It's almost as if the spirit was trying to get my attention, but I ignored it. I was so scared that I didn't want to move, and I wanted to make sure she was gone before I did anything. Once the air became lighter, I reluctantly moved towards the bathroom. It was a strange experience to say the least. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description, along with a few links to buy my dark fantasy novel. I hope you have an amazing day. Until next time, bye-bye.